Good evening. Good evening. This is the Couples Academy Ask the Expert show, and I'm Jeff Witt, and I am hosting with our
Charmaine.
wonderful edition. Go ahead.
Charmaine Jennings. So super excited to be here tonight, especially with the expert Jeff. So yes, I'm super excited to see what questions we'll be able to tackle tonight together.
All right. What I need you guys to do is first start sending your questions in right away. Like, share, subscribe right down here. Also, any of the programs that you're interested in that we discuss are also below there. I've got a couple. Good evening, Walter, coming in from Las Vegas as well. I've got a couple little things to share with you. We have a new, basically the last chance weekend. We're coming up on the end here, and we've only got a couple more slots. So if you're even thinking about it, you need to make the call. Get in touch with Hassani, get in touch with Danielle, get in touch with somebody, fill out the form to show your interest so we can lock in your spot. Even if you just have a curiosity about it and are thinking about it, that's going to be an amazing weekend. And we have something special planned for the Valentine's Day folks so that you can walk into a new year, a new Valentine's Day with a new relationship, renewed, rejuvenated, reinvigorated.
Yes.
And all the other idiots.
A lot of surprises. A lot of surprises.
And we also have a new date for the Foundry. I know I've been getting hit up by some of the guys out there. When are we doing Foundry? When's another Foundry? I mean, we also have a date for Unearthed. It's coming up. We got a couple things to figure out, but probably within the next day you're going to know. But the new Foundry is coming up, a 12-week path to manhood. Like, I'm telling you, the guys in the class right now are killing it. You know, I still got a couple stragglers. We're going to get a hold of them, rein them in. But at the end of the day, these guys are really growing and showing. I mean, some of the things that we're seeing are remarkable in their relationships, in their own personal development. One guy didn't even know he was going to do it, ended up buying a food truck and starting a business in this 3 weeks.
Wow.
So we're seeing both the transformation in all four quadrants, the spiritual quadrant, getting in touch with yourself and knowing who you are. We're seeing in the emotional quadrant, being able to relate and be intelligent with our emotions, our emotional intelligence at a higher level with our spouses and with those we love around us so that we're not always causing these triggers and causing these problems. We're working on the physical part. Guys have physical challenges that they're taking on to get their weight right, to get their fitness levels up, to get their minds right. And then obviously the financials, the last quadrant, we do focus on that, but it's the result of all the work that we do in the other quadrants. So that's coming up. And then I definitely want to let you guys see the new version of the commercial for Last Chance Weekend, which I love because it just doesn't show the facility. It actually shows some of the interactions that are going on. Take a look at that real quick while you're putting in your questions. I'm going to tell you, Last Chance Weekend starts out so tough. It does. I know you guys are sitting there at home right now, not even talking to each other. Somebody's in a room watching this by themselves, going, I need to take my husband, I need to take my wife to Last Chance Weekend, but he takes me off. I'm gonna let you know, you come in fighting, but on day 3, when you see these couples leaving with a smile on their face, sometimes they haven't talked, they haven't even been in the same room for several months. One couple was separated for 6 months and had not even done anything but spoke on the phone and only had interactions dealing with their children. And they left together with a new plan, reinvigorated, and they're still doing good. We're checking in with them. Some of them are on here every single day. In fact, we have a couple questions from them, but they're today, which is good because they're still going through a process. But I'm glad that they asked a question from this morning. We got a couple questions coming in from this morning.
Okay.
And while you guys are asking yours, go ahead.
All right. So from Cassandra, it says dealing with multiple triggers due to the disclosure. It can be as simple as song, a food, the intersection of the route that was taken. How do I deal with these triggers?
It's a great question. You know what, Charmaine, ladies first. This is our first time together, so I want to give you a shot at that, and then I'll chime in.
Well, I mean, it definitely is a part of the recovery process. Triggers will occur, and as they show up, it's really important to really track them, really write down what the triggers are. I know you mentioned food. It could be a route that you've taken that kind of reminds you of the infidelity. But when it comes to triggers, it really goes back to what you were well, first of all, acknowledging the feeling. So what is going on in that moment and what feeling is attached with that trigger. But you also want to once you've attached the feeling to it, then you really want to work on how do I self-regulate, self-manage. And of course, I'm not really given very much about how you're responding to those triggers, that those things are triggers. So really associate a feeling with it. And if it's anger, if it's fear, really being able to come up with a strategy to deal with that feeling in the moment, because you're going to have to take some of the same route. There's going to be a smell, there's going to be a food, there's going to be something that really reminds you of that. So identify the feeling and then really work on a strategy to really help you manage well that feeling. But avoidance is never an option.
No, I definitely I have a couple small tools. One of the best tools that I can ever teach anyone is meditation or mindfulness. Okay. I'm not talking about, some kind of crazy, weird meditation. I'm talking about just mindfulness, being able to close your eyes. And I always talk about this, catch and release. Because this is the thing, the trigger is always going to be there.
Yep.
Right? And we could talk about planting anchors on a show. I would have to go in depth about creating new triggers, positive triggers out of a negative trigger, but that is a deep discussion. We can't do that here right now. We don't have time. But just simply closing your eyes every morning, allowing thoughts to come in your head. See, at 7 o'clock in the morning is when cortisol triggers are the highest in our body, cortisol. That's a stress hormone. So typically the thoughts that we have in the morning tend to be a little bit more of a stressful nature. So when we take the time to meditate and we allow a thought to come in, okay, you're simply going to close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, and then breathe regularly and sit in a comfortable position with your spine erect. You are going to allow thoughts to come into your head. You are going to acknowledge the thought. Yes. And then you're simply going to release that thought and wait for the next one. Like you're changing channels on a TV, except you're not looking for anything this time. And what this is a practice of doing. If you do this every single day, I do this every single morning. What it does is it allows you to be non-reactionary in the real world. It teaches you that this thought, this trigger, this emotion. So for me, it might be, wow, this bill is due. It's really big. I got to pay the lawyers. Okay. I acknowledge that thought. Next thought. And you just wait for the next thought to come. Acknowledging it as opposed to trying to fight it allows it to have its existence without taking over. And the goal here is not to attach emotion to a thought. That's when you give it life. If you attach emotion to a thought, that's when it will take you down this dark path. But if you can just acknowledge that it exists and let the channel change in the practice of meditation in the mornings, you'll become, especially after about 20, 30 days of doing this, we're only taking 10 minutes. And you'll find that you'll be able to find that freedom very quickly. All right.
Awesome.
What do we have next?
Want to take another question? Okay.
Gilberto, what's going on, my friend from Panama? What are some of the things that we can do to get out of our own head? Assumptions. Dealing with assumptions. Assumptions are very much like triggers. So you can definitely do the meditation trick. Charmaine, do you have something for this? I have something for this, but I definitely want to give you a shot at this.
Well, with assumptions, whoa, that's like being on the ladder of inference. And they definitely, a lot of times, assumptions start out with taking a piece of or a partial piece of evidence that we might have, and then we kind of jump on this ladder of inference where we start adding and adding and adding. And then it kind of gets out of control to where now that one piece of small evidence that you may have about a situation or a circumstance is completely skewed, and we've kind of taken it on this journey, and we've given it control instead of us controlling it. And so a lot of times we just have to focus on what we know to be true, and really kind of sit in that, and then really lead with more questions, as opposed to allowing our mind to take a journey, just taking kind of control of it. What do I know to be true? What questions do I have? And really, who is the conversation appropriate to that I should be having it with? And so that we're not kind of sitting in a situation by ourselves and allowing our mind to, again, control us instead of us controlling it. So I'll go with that. I'll kind of share it with Jeff. What would you add to that?
So I have a couple tools and techniques that, because these are common in business, they're common everywhere. Like, you have assumptions. This is the mind, the intellect. The job of the intellect is to discriminate. That's what it does. It chooses between one thing and the other. So it takes partial information and it creates a story in the mind to justify that data piece, that data set. So what we want to do is we want to analyze that data set, and we want to put it under critical review before we take action that can cause us damage or harm. Okay. I had a friend who received a text message. It was actually a student who received a text message from his spouse. And in the process of seeing that, he read it the wrong way and made all these assumptions because his mind is tuned to see the negative first. And what ended up happening is it caused a big uproar that could have been avoided. The text clearly, to anyone who saw it a different way, and from the spouse. And he like was ready to get a divorce just off this assumption. Okay. So, and announced it on social media. So that you see that could create a whole conundrum of problems. So we have to stop for a second. We're going to write down the assumption. Then we're going to write down the data that we have that believes that assumption to be true. And I'm not going to tell you not to investigate it, but I'm going to ask you to ask yourself a couple of questions. The first question: if this assumption were true, what other pieces of information would I need in order to prove it to be a fact? Then the second question is, if this assumption is false, what information do I need to prove it false?
The
third question I would ask is, if I were to act on this assumption without the data, either way, what are the possible repercussions?
Yes, consequences.
Then the fourth question I would ask is, what do I want as an outcome? Simply, what do I want as an outcome in order to resolve this? Because a lot of times our assumptions will feed on themselves, and there's not really a desired outcome that we're trying to achieve here. And it may be tied to other pains and other stresses in our lives that have nothing to do with that other person. Like, you could have a bad day at work, come home, and your wife looks at you funny, and she might be joking, but you're now triggered because of all the stuff that happened at work, and you're taking it out on her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, whoa, like, I didn't ask for all that. You've got to be able to ask, what do I want as an outcome? As far, what do I get out of, whether this is true or not true? What am I getting out of pursuing this? What is my objective here? And then I would simply walk the block. What do I want for me? What do I want for the person that I'm assuming something about? What do I imagine we want together? And then what is the fourth and final? We call this walking the block. We're literally walking around the problem putting it in the middle, and we're walking from everyone's perspective. What do I want for me? What do I think they see that's going on? What do we want together as an outcome? What can I imagine would be the desired outcome for both of us? And then what am I planning on doing about it? And that should involve a discussion if your answer isn't resolved in that first process. That'll give you some time to cool down. It'll give you a chance to let creativity come in and place a real story. And then if you're still not satisfied, look for the evidence before acting. And do that in silence. Because if you're missing pieces of the puzzle, if you have all the data, you don't have an assumption. You have a reality.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I would say. It's just a structured process to walk the block. It's like kind of a self-cognitive behavioral therapy technique. You know what I mean?
And it's calming. The process is calming too. It slows your reaction.
Yeah, because you don't want to do anything while you're all stuck in your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Police shouldn't investigate with emotion. They should investigate just based on the fact. Judges and juries should not make decisions based on emotions. And the problem is we move in judgment as human beings all the time. And that's why our lives get messed up, because we overreact or we don't react to the things we should be reacting to because we're so caught up in one thought. That thought being attached to the emotion thing is a huge problem. Mm-hmm. We should separate those two as much as we can because it teaches us to control it as opposed to be controlled by it. It teaches us to be disciplined as opposed to being instinctual. Instincts are good, but they're not everything. We got one more question from this morning's show that we need to answer. Oh, you and I both clicked on it.
Go ahead. All right, from D. What if you find out there was infidelity prior to marriage, even if there's no infidelity since marriage? How do you overlook the prior? He thinks it doesn't count since he changed with the marriage. Okay, so D, if we're reading that correctly, it seems like, you and your current husband or partner were together. And prior to your marriage, there was infidelity. And so clearly it was discovered. And even though it's been a clean slate now that you're married, it's become a problem. And so it still goes back to, is it considered a betrayal? Was there an agreement? Was there an agreement of monogamy before you all entered into marriage? And so clearly there is, because the question has been brought up. And so how do you deal with it? It's the same process. It goes back to, we had an agreement and that agreement was broken.
I think there's something here that goes into the other things we talked about. One, the catch and release. Two, what do you want as an outcome?
Mm-hmm.
See, because that's going to determine the method, because the pain that you're feeling, the nervous that you're feeling is because of a betrayal. Mm-hmm. But then there's like, do I really want this thing that happened before I said I do to interrupt all the great things that have happened since I've said I do? And so what do you want as an outcome? If we start operating in outcomes instead of situations, what do we want as an outcome? Well, I just want to have a conversation, clear the air, and we're able to move on. All right. As long as I can for certain know that nothing's been going on since. Well, then that's an approachable situation, and you're coming at it with a goal. I'm going to tell you right now, one thing men hate is getting in a car and not knowing where they're going. My wife can go in a mall and shop for 20 hours and walk out with one bag, and it'll be like a barrette or something simple, and drives most men crazy. Okay. Me, on the other hand, I could walk in, be buying for her, and I'm in and out with the whole wardrobe, makeup, shoes, the whole nine in 30 minutes. And getting in the car, not knowing where you're going, not knowing what the outcome is, not knowing what the desired effect is, can drive someone nuts. So instead of antagonizing, if you can just figure out what the outcome is that you want from it, then you can make a decision whether this requires therapy because it's really deeply hurting you, or if it's just something you want to have a simple conversation about and move past for good, because your outcome is the most important thing.
And Jeff, I would actually add to that by asking the question: one, how long ago was this? How did you uncover this information? Was it was it given to you voluntarily? And most importantly, have you seen that person? Meaning, a lot of times there's behaviors that also align with, back when this occurred. Were there, how different is your relationship now than it was before? And so sometimes, you have to ask yourself, does that person still exist? And I know a lot of people in this situation, they're like, I don't know that person. Like, a lot of times the relationship has evolved and the behavior, the identity of that person has not shown up for a long time. So they, that person has attended their own funeral, and that and that person doesn't exist anymore. And so the couple, once that full disclosure occurs, they are focusing on rebuilding the relationship as it is in its state right now.
Yeah, you don't want to go digging up the past and cause it to relive itself. That's for sure. You need what you need to get beyond your pain. If there's nothing going on, there's no pattern, there's no concern, there's no fear. You've said clearly that, like, there's not been any infidelity since the marriage. It's like, okay, what do you need for closure? Period. Yes. Because beyond closure, you start digging that thing up, you could spiral out. See, pain happens when we become aware that we aren't competent or feel incompetent in a particular area, that we're not able to solve something, or if it says something about your character. And when we sit in that pain for too long, it becomes sadness, depression, fear, anxiety, worry, and doubt. That's what leads to alcoholism and other triggers, and it also leads to further infidelity. What we don't want to take is a minor concern and turn it into a pain on both sides that could lead to any of those other things. So I'm not telling you not to address it. It should be addressed, but you need to figure out what your outcome that you desire is from it first. I do need to go to a quick commercial. By the way, both myself and Charmaine, nosotros hablamos español, entonces hay muchas cosas que tú puedes hacer con Couples Academy en español. ¿Sí, Charmaine?
Sí. Bienvenidos. Y ya, estoy lista también.
Pero yo voy a mostrar lo comercial en español.
Okay, gracias.
Couples Academy is committed to serving couples around the world by reaching beyond cultural lines and language barriers. We are proud to announce that we now serve the Spanish-speaking community. So whether you're here in the United States or abroad, Couples Academy has a place for you.
Couples Academy se compromete a servir parejas de todo el mundo, superando las fronteras culturales y las barreras del idioma. Ahora, estamos orgullosos de anunciar que servimos a la comunidad de habla hispana. Entonces, ya sea que estés aquí en los Estados Unidos o en el extranjero, Couples Academy está aquí para servirle.
Yes, and just so you know,
esa es tu esposa, Jeff, ¿sí?
Yeah, that was my wife, my lovely wife. And just so you guys know, we do have English speakers practitioners as well. So here we go. All right, that's that. So we do have a couple other questions in here, and I know we only got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Let's see. What do you see here that we can pull out? There's a ton of questions coming in now.
Yes. Well, there are tons of questions coming in. I know this one's a quick one by Jay. It says, should I feel guilty about tracking my husband? Is it even okay for me mentally? Wow.
People who have nothing to hide should hide nothing. I listen, like I had a couple that was separated because of COVID in like Australia and New Zealand were like 2 of the hardest countries to get in. He was here, she was over there. There was an infidelity, and they needed to resolve the issue. So I told the brother, put cameras in your house, get them in your car, get a little spy bot app and put it on your phone and give it to her. So
be proactive.
If he is a smart man, he's going to give you access to whatever he needs. If he needs to talk to me to figure that out, listen, if I ain't doing nothing wrong, I always say this, people don't get it. But if you can share bodies, you can share phones.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't need, it's not about privacy anymore. Like, that's not what a marriage is about. I don't know who educated you on what a marriage was. And if you think you need your space and she needs her space, y'all picked the wrong thing. You didn't want marriage, but you're in it now. Like, you guys know each other's most intimate secrets, the scariest things. If the things that went on behind closed doors got put out in the public, you'd be really, really embarrassed.
Yeah. This is your life partner.
Exactly. This is
the person. This is the person who is power of attorney. I mean, they will be able to make decisions about what happens to you if you are in the hospital and can't make those decisions for yourself. This is a person that is committed to cleaning you up when we're 90, 102 years old. And like, this is the person that's committed to you. So full disclosure is not just with your words, it's also with your actions. So,
yeah, if you can't be open and honest with your spouse, I don't know what you call that. That's not a marriage, right? Like,
absolutely,
that's just not a marriage. We want to get to the point, and maybe there's trust issues. That's what we're here for. That's what counselors are there for. You can learn what trust really is. Trust isn't what people think it is. It really, really is not. And people jump into trust too easily, and they have their trust broken way too easily. And, you know, some people wear trust like a cheap piece of jewelry, and they just let everybody see trust. You like just let people in.
Right.
Someone you just met, oh, that's my new best friend. That's not trust. Okay, trust is something that's earned through a process of belief, and then faith in a process, and actually testing the waters, and then earned as trust. And once you get past trust, there's another level beyond trust. It's knowledge. Once you know for a fact, like, there's a comfort zone. I'm not thinking about worrying about them. I'm not going to live in that paranoia because I know what my wife does every day. I have a complete plan. And part of that is opening up this phone, opening up my computer, and complete transparency. Because when I know, I don't even need trust anymore because I know. And so guys who don't want to give up your phone, you know, especially if you have stuff in your past, dump the phone, start over. Whatever you got to do to clear the slate so that trust can actually be established and get to that point of knowledge so that you're not worried about any of that stuff anymore.
So Jay is trusting but verifying, that's an old school expression, trust but verify. That's what Jay seems to be doing in this situation.
Oh, I love this from Gonzalez. Gonzalez is my man. I love him to death. He's growing so much with us. I have learned not to entertain those triggers because when you feed them, they grow back. You allow them to overtake you to a different place. I don't allow them to hinder me nor take control of my thoughts. Now I cast down my strongholds and imaginations. Now, as I've learned to mature, I have a catch and release method. Thanks again, my brothers, mentors, and then he mentions the Foundry. So,
nice.
Yeah, we're going deep on that stuff, folks, and Foundry. So, like, if you want to get in for that next class, make sure you do it. I will say this. Like, life change can happen. It can happen very fast. And I've been fortunate to see several of these brothers. Like, because once it clicks here, once you have a few hours of intense work done, and it's like a light switch. All of a sudden, you're in a dark room. You don't know where you're at. the lights come on, and you go, oh, that's where everything is. And that's all it takes is just one little switch in your brain, and it takes someone who knows how to help you find that. Because we can't turn it on for you. You got to turn it on for yourself, but we can definitely show you the techniques that can get you there. Where are we at? We're about to close out, aren't we?
We are.
Do you want to answer one more question since we got, do we have anything?
Oh, I'm looking. We have some stories. All right. I'm back with my partner after infidelity, and I can't act or feel as though anything bothers me from the incident. She has no empathy about it. I'm putting it all, the effort to show my love, but what do I do?
Okay, so I'm assuming that the empathy was on her. I mean, the infidelity was on her end, because I can't act as if anything bothers me from the incident. She has no empathy about it. I would honestly, this is a situation where counseling is absolutely necessary, because when someone offends someone, they want to shove it under the rug. They just want to move on and get past it. But if you can't get past it, I'm telling you, it's going to boil inside of you. It's going to explode. So what I would first do is maybe, if you can't get them, mention it, bring it up, say, hey, look, I'd just like to do some counseling so we can get past this. I want to get past this, but I just want to go through the process, structured process, so that I'm not sitting here feeling it, resentment, anger, fear, doubt, guilt, blame, shame, all that stuff. I want to just deal with it so that we can move on. They may have some hesitancy on that end, but I would also consider just doing the counseling yourself to get yourself in a better place, because you're not always going to get everyone to go along with you all the time. But what you can do is improve yourself and deal and heal yourself so that you can move forward. And also it sharpens your eye a little better, so you're not just paranoid. You can see changes because you're improved, and from a position of clarity you can see what's going on. What do you think, Charmaine?
No, I completely agree with that. It's really important not to suppress what's happening, and to definitely deal with it, and especially with support. Especially and Greg, you mentioned in the next feed that she cheated on you. So yeah, she doesn't get to hold you hostage to her to the action, right? And so you definitely have to make sure you're doing the one-on-one work to get that outlet in a healthy way. And and the offender definitely needs to respect the process, and to be willing, if they're all in with the relationship and growing it, they have to be all in with the process of dealing with the issue.
I got one quick one before we go. Any French-speaking therapist?
Wow.
Je parle un peu de français, mais il y a beaucoup de temps que je n'ai pas mis français. J'ai besoin de pratiquer un peu. But that being said, not yet. I'm not confident in my French skills to perform therapy, only because I haven't practiced it in years. I don't run into a lot of my French-speaking friends all speak English and prefer to speak English. So I tell you this, I am working on it. We're working on getting it for you, and I will practice, I promise. But I just got to get familiar with all of the terms. But thank you guys for joining us. Charmaine, did you want to say anything before we take off?
No, just definitely make sure you visit Couples Academy, the website. Definitely tune in to for those upcoming dates for Foundry and the other phenomenal programs that we have. And thank you all for hanging out with us tonight.
All right. Oh, I also have one more thing I need to mention. And I know, actually, you know what? They got to fix the date on that. So we'll mention that tomorrow. So thank you guys for joining us, and have a great evening. We will see you tomorrow.